All right, so you just spent a little bit of time practicing how to do some of the important steps in summarizing. Remember, we left off here last time. So let's talk a little bit more about the next steps in summarizing. So you identify the topic, okay, and then go back in this lesson if you're not sure how to do that. Then you decide, is the topic sentence, or is there a topic sentence of this chunk of text that could stand as a summary? Because a lot of times, again, we know as writers, we put kind of the gist of what we're going to talk about and then we elaborate. And so a lot of authors do that. But let's imagine for a moment that the topic sentence isn't good enough for a gist. It might give you an idea of what you're about to talk about. It definitely introduces the topic, but it's not going to be sufficient for a summary that we would be sharing in our dialogue groups for reciprocal teaching. So that's going to happen more often than not, because as you get older, writing gets more sophisticated. It's less direct, and you're having to use different skills like inferencing and things like that, synthesizing, which is what we do when we summarize. So let's take a look back at this apple orchard, apple picking paragraph. That was the topic of this one, apple picking. And we said that it does not have a topic sentence that would serve as a gist. That first sentence here, Sue and her family like their trips to the apple orchard. If you go into this, it's not just about what them liking it. And we're going to go through that together and kind of see that happen. Look at the last sentence. Sometimes the last sentence can help you, maybe give you the main idea or be a bit of a summary. They look forward to it every summer. That's not the case either. It's not just about how much they like it. There's other things that the author wants us to know about it in there, okay? So let's start with rule 1. These rules come into play once you realize that there isn't a topic sentence that you can utilize for your summary, for your gist. So we look at information that is repeated. So I want you to take a minute and I want you to decide if you think there's an idea or some information in here that is repeated. So hopefully you're noticing that 3 times in here they mention how much they like it. Now I'm not going to delete it the first time. The author repeated it. It's obviously important. Remember, we said repetition can be signify something is important, but the idea of deleting repeated information is in our summary. We don't need to repeat information, because if you think about the definition of summary, it's something that is short. And if I'm repeating the same ideas, that's not short, okay? The author definitely repeated it here because the author really wants us to know how much this family likes going apple picking. So I wouldn't delete this area here, but I could mark through everyone in the family enjoy picking apples, and I could even get rid of they look forward to it every summer. The idea of it when it happens is a little bit different than just liking it. By the way, I think apples get picked in the fall, but I'm not going to go there with that right now. The paragraph is serving a different purpose for us right now. I'll have to look that up and see. But definitely that information, I don't have to say multiple times in my summary that they liked it, okay? So leaving out information that's repeated when we're crafting our summary, okay? Let's go to the next page. All right, so you can notice I took that out. Whoops, rule 2. We'll get to that in a second. You can notice I took that out, and then I did end up deciding to get rid of that on this step. So we took out the repeated information, and now we have to leave out information that isn't important. So I've talked to you a little bit about how to decide if something's important or not. We said that if it can be left out and not change the meaning, then it really isn't important. So let's apply that idea here, okay? We need that first sentence because it introduced the topic. It tells us that important idea that they really like it, and it tells us that we're going on a trip to the apple orchard, okay? Then we get into this. They would get up early in the morning and pack a picnic lunch. Well, why do you think I went through early in the morning? Think to yourself for a minute. Why did Ms. Rivera scribble through that? I scribbled that out because I don't think it really matters if they leave early or not. I think it does elaborate on the idea that they really like it, but it doesn't, it's not really necessary. If I leave that in the summary, it's not going to be short enough, and I can leave it out and it won't matter. But it is important that I know they get up and they pack a lunch, okay? They always took their own baskets to fill with apples. Well, I mean, I've been apple picking before. If I show up there, actually blueberry picking is what I've done more. If I show up there without a basket, guess what? They give me something to put the blueberries in. So the fact that they take their own apples does mean that, they really like it, and it's probably a tradition since they own apple picking baskets. I don't own an apple picking basket. But it's not important that I tell that in a summary. If I'm telling you what this family does, the fact that they bring their own baskets doesn't really matter. I can assume that there's a basket involved somehow. Otherwise, they can't pick apples. Okay. They pick the fruit and fill their baskets. That's what they do with the orchard. So now I'm starting to see a pattern. Up here it says they get up and pack a lunch. They pick the fruit and fill their baskets. I'm starting to realize this is kind of some steps in what they do. It's what they do when they go to the orchard. After they pay the farmer for the apples. Why do you think I scribbled through that? Well, number one, Sue and her family would be in jail for stealing apples if they didn't pay the farmer. I think that's something we can just assume. I'm not really sure it's an important thing. I think we all know when you go places as a consumer, you pay for it. So I marked through that. I don't think that should be in the summary. They eat a lunch there. Okay. They packed it. They eat it. It's important. And then I decided to go ahead and get rid of this. I didn't really think it was that important. If I wanted to include in there that they went in the summer, I could just throw it in. Sue and her family like to go apple picking in the summer, and when they get there, they pick the apples and then they eat a lunch. It would be something simple like that. So that was the decisions made about marking out unimportant information. And we'll do more practice with that. And you can always come back to this slide and kind of listen to the reasons why. So the last step here, we have the same look going on here with our paragraph. We're not changing much, but we're going to do a little bit of a different thinking here. Rule 3 kind of confused me when I first learned about what they meant by this rule, but it makes sense. I want to read you from my notes, okay? Because you're going to be in my position when you're the first time that you are the summarizer in our reciprocal teaching group. And if you have notes that you're taking right now, you can use those notes when it's your turn to be the leader. When it's your turn to be the teacher. So I wrote in my notes here, some paragraphs tell you how to do something or describe something step by step. So, and a lot of paragraphs do that, especially in your science or in your social studies. They're going to be telling you steps in a process. They're going to be telling you steps in a process for science. Okay, sorry about that. Someone came to the door. That's how it is now, isn't it? Get our picture back here. So when I look at this, I realize this is the steps that someone goes through in going to an orchard. This is what this family does. If this instead of this being about an apple orchard, if it was about types of apples and it listed a bunch of apples, part of my summary would just include that it's types of apples. So that's where this listing a title comes from. It's types of apples. This is steps, what a family does at the apple orchard. So it isn't just about them liking their trips. It's actually listing in order what they do. And like I was saying, science is always going to have a lot of steps in it. So you could be looking for that. Steps in a cycle, steps in a process, steps in an experiment. And social studies can be listing events. Events can be steps as well. So once I've gone through all those rules, I'm ready to write my final summary. And again, I'm writing my own summary because there wasn't a topic sentence that worked. So let's go through the steps again. We thought the topic, apple picking. Asking ourselves, and no one will think you're crazy if you're kind of talking to yourself a little bit, what does the author want me to know about apple picking? Well, it wasn't just that the family liked it. Upon further review, we realized it's what this family does when they go to the apple orchard. So I think in my head, the sentence starter, the author wants me to know how the family gets ready and what they do at an apple orchard. Okay. So I rewrite that as a statement. The family packs lunch for apple picking, picks apples, and enjoys a picnic. Got this thing in the way. Oh, technology. Enjoys a picnic lunch. Okay, so those are all the steps that we would follow. Okay. All right, so these are those steps that you would follow in writing a summary. So you might want to put those in your notes. My front door is about to slam. And we're going to do a little bit more practicing with this, of course. But that's pretty much everything we need to know about what we do when we're summarizing. And again, it's called the gist, and it's an important part of reading.